We live in a time where masculinity is shamed, and men don't know what it means to be a man. As a pastor and counselor, I've spent the better part of my life equipping and training others. My goal with this show is to translate my hard-earned experience into tools and tactics to help you become stronger as a man. This is the BraveCo Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Valentin. Hey BraveCo men, I want to tell you about a project that we just finished. It's our Foundations of Masculinity 12 video series that will really help you grow stronger, more confident as a man. Whole bunch of guys are wondering, man, how do I deal with my pain? How do I learn healthy boundaries? How do I lead myself, my family well? How do I become a leader? This course is for you. If you're interested in growing, take 12 weeks out of your life, dig in, do it with a friend, and really up your game. Guys, you can purchase this at braveco.org. Now on to this week's episode. Hey man, this week's podcast is a Q&A session that I did for the Bethel Transformation Center School of Relational Health. I think that you guys are gonna love this Q&A session. There's a lot of really cool questions that were asked. It's all about relationships. And I think that it's really going to help you guys a lot. So hopefully you enjoy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final live Q&A session with the one and only Jason Valentin. Let me tell you.
What am I to you, Al?
This is my father-in-law.
Oh.
I know. Truly, I'm here because of him for so many reasons. But I'm so excited. Today, we have an extended live Q&A session, so we're going to jump in. Here we go. Well, first question of the day. Can you explain the difference between a sozo, counseling, and coaching?
No. Next question.
Of course.
Yeah. So a sozo is a Holy Spirit-led journey that is going to help you get connected to the Godhead. So Father God, the Holy Spirit, Jesus, and really help you work through like the 4 doors, which would be sexual sin, anger, jealousy, self-hatred, things like that. So it's this Holy Spirit-led journey. Like a sozo is incredible, can be really incredible even for people that have had trauma actually in the past. Because let's say you had a really traumatic experience, whether it's a car accident or even physical abuse. And you get to go back to that place, but you get to invite God with you into that journey.
Yeah.
And whereas maybe you thought for a long time, like God left me there, he wasn't there with me. And all of a sudden God's like in your story, in that journey with you. And he's really in the moment, like bringing some healing to your life, talking to you. It'd be pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing. And Donna was sharing some stories the other day of kind of how she's coached people through some sozos and how she asked them, where was Jesus in that moment? And how people really begin to see like what the Lord was even doing in a moment that was so traumatic in their life.
Yeah.
It's so healing.
It can be phenomenal. So Sozo's have been great. I really enjoy a good sozo session. You just never know what's going to happen. I have hours of stories. Honestly, I did.
Really?
Yeah, I went to a drug rehab for kids that were 12 to 18 years old in Alabama.
Wow.
Called The Bridge. And we started out just by asking these kids like, hey, are you good if, like, would you like to do just a one-on-one appointment with me? Well, actually, there's 3 of us, where we lead you through like a Holy Spirit-led journey. And these kids would be like, sure, not even saved, didn't know anything. And we would get them in there and start leading them on this encounter.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. It's probably the most powerful ministry I've ever done in my life to an individual was these things. And I know I'm supposed to be like telling the difference between,
this is,
but like this is how powerful, and I'm not even trying to like hype up Sozo so that you guys go get one. It's like I have so many stories of these kids hearing God's voice like audibly.
Wow.
So a kid would freak out and be like, did you hear that?
Wow.
Yeah, gold dust falling on them.
Holy smokes.
Them not being saved, God leading them to their grave. And he's like, I'm not leading the sozo. I'm literally saying like, what do you see? And this kid said, I'm in a graveyard. And I'm like, oh no.
Oh gosh.
And, and I said, okay, what do you see? And he says, I see a tombstone, but I can't read it. And I said, well, just ask Jesus, like, Jesus, will you show me what it says? And the tombstone, he reads it out loud, right? I'm not telling this kid what it says. He says, I want to get the exact wording right. This is like 10 years ago. He says, if you follow me, I will save your life. And I was like, what does that mean to you? And he was like, I don't know. Like, and I told my whole team, like, don't get these kids saved. Like, you're not in here to get these kids saved, right? Like, we're not pitching something to them.
Right.
So, but in this sozo, Jesus was leading these kids. So
crazy.
And like 19 out of the 24 kids got saved.
That's crazy.
In their sozo, yeah. And I was specifically told my team, do not lead these kids to the Lord. But in the sozo, Jesus was coming, or Father God was coming, encountering these kids. So this kid, right, I tell him, like, hey, this is what it typically means. Like, it means that you give your heart to God and blah, blah, blah. This is what he does.
Right.
And he said, he's got his eyes closed. He said, I want to do that. So he does that. And now I'm off telling a story, but this is going to help you guys,
it's
right?
Great.
He's off telling, I lead this kid to the Lord in his sozo. And all of a sudden he says, there's a cloud in the room. Like in his mind, he's like, a cloud just came in.
Yeah.
And I said, well, just tell me what's happening. And he said, it's up to my waist.
Wow.
Like, so he's standing in this like fog in this cloud. And I hear the Holy Spirit say, invite the cloud in, right? Which obviously, like, that would be a pretty Christian thing for me to do. And say, so I just said, like, why don't you, like, do you want, the cloud is the Holy Spirit, like, do you want the Holy Spirit to come inside of you? And he said, yeah. And so, check this is so crazy. So I didn't tell this kid, all I told him was, just invite him in, like, just ask him to come inside of you. He says, it's coming into my veins, right? And then he gets so high. He gets so high. He gets so high.
Like emotionally,
like he is
so
like,
excited.
Oh, I feel so high. I didn't tell this kid what he should feel.
Yes.
I didn't tell him what happens when the Holy Spirit comes. I didn't tell this kid about manifestations. He is saying, I feel so high. I've never felt this high before. And he starts laughing, and then he gets all this peace on him. That happened. And think about it, like, we're in a drug rehab.
I'm like, that's wild.
It was insane. So that happened, but the coolest thing is, one kid would leave there and he would tell his friends that he got high. And so kids that didn't want to do it were coming and saying, like, I want to do that. I want to get high.
Wow.
And so I had a kid fall completely asleep. He was, I promise I'm going to answer your questions, but we got a long time. So I'm just so excited. Like, I had a kid that but this is sozo, right? Like, these are the different journeys that you could go on. I had a kid who was a little bit mentally challenged.
Yeah.
He had a ton of pain from his grandfather. He was crying a whole bunch when I came in there about his grandfather, who had passed away, and his grandfather was everything to him. But he was, again, like, a little bit slow, and I didn't know where I was going to take the sozo. And so I started to lead him through a couple things, and then he falls asleep. He literally falls asleep. And I just felt like the Holy Spirit was just like, just leave him alone. So I sat in there for 40 minutes while this kid sleeps. He wakes up right at the end. I literally was like, well, I'm not going to have a chance to lead him into anything, whatever. Like, this isn't my thing.
For this whole sozo session.
Yeah, he wakes up, and I said, how are you? And he had had this complete encounter with God while he slept.
What?
Literally, God went in, healed his heart. He had complete forgiveness for his grandpa. It was like amazing. So, anyways,
it feels like sozos are kind of these like things that maybe have been troubling you for years or whatever the situation is. I mean, being addicted to drugs, you can imagine sort of like the layers and layers and layers you have to process. But then in an instant, you have an encounter with the Lord, and suddenly
it's like a hack.
Yeah, it's so wild.
So sozo can be an incredible hack to years of disconnection with God, years of frustration, anger, sexual sin, and you get this crazy encounter that can literally change your life. Now, what I love to do is, honestly, I love to follow up Sozo with counseling.
Yes.
And here's why.
Yeah, tell us.
Right? Because these kids, for instance, like these kids, they have this incredible encounter, but that encounter didn't teach them how to love themselves well. Right? It didn't give them any tools.
Yeah.
It gave them incredible breakthrough, right? And they have this experience that like God is so real and I'm saved, but now you need the discipleship portion, right?
Yeah, that's really
and
good.
so a lot of people, they experience tons of breakthrough, even from trauma in their in their sozo. But then, okay, how then now do I go walk that out with my spouse?
Yeah.
How do I walk that out with good communications, healthy boundaries? Because it's not like you automatically have your brain rewired to now know how to set boundaries if you didn't know how, or how to see the opposite sex if that's where you got hurt. So coupling sozo with counseling or coaching can be fantastic. So counseling, counselors use different modalities, different training to help lead a patient to the desired outcome. So for instance, Al, if you came to me and you said, oh, I'm really struggling allowing Elijah, my son, into my emotions and to open myself up, I could use counseling, and I could, instead of like, close your eyes, let's take you on a Holy Spirit journey, I could be like, okay, what happens when you start to open up? I'm diagnosing, right? I'm getting a whole bunch of information, and then I'm going to give you some tools.
Yeah.
Or, even we can go to, like, a psychologist could even go, oh, yeah, you have OCD. Like, you have this disorder that works like this and is creating this thing. This is what's happening in your brain.
Right.
So counseling, therapy can really help you understand how you work, why you work that way, and then it's designed to give you some tools to then help counteract that.
Yeah, that's really good.
Coaching is this belief that you have the answers that you need inside of you. It's my job to help lead you to those answers.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you questions that helps you bring out the answers, that helps you really dial in what you really want, what you really need, what you really desire, what your ultimate desire is, and help you come up with the right conclusion. So I would say this: if you're like, man, I really need an encounter with God, I really need to hear the Lord's voice. Like, I really need a connection with God. Hands down, Sozo. Like, not even a question.
Yeah.
Or, man, I've really been struggling with self-care, self-love for a long time, compassion, because of this event that happened in my life. Like, Sozo could be incredible for that.
Yeah.
It could really be incredible. Counseling's like, man, I've been struggling with the same cycle, these same tools. Every relationship I get into, I do this thing. I don't feel like I have tools to deal with this and this and this. I hate this thing about myself that I do. I sabotage relationship here.
Yeah.
Like, without a doubt, counseling's an incredible way to go. You and your husband are having a hard time communicating, or you and your wife are having a hard time. She's just a horrible, evil person. Send her to counseling. No, I'm just kidding. We got to joke around a little bit, right? Coaching, if you're like, I want to find a really good direction for my life, or I just need to level up in this area.
Yeah.
Not like I feel really broken in this area, because that's where I'd be like counseling. But coaching, I'd be like, man, I'm just having a hard time getting direction, getting motivated, moving from point A to point B. And we could go much deeper, but for the average person, like, that's a pretty good description.
Yeah.
And I gave you guys some bonus stories too.
Some stories in there too. But it's great to hear how they kind of all interconnect with each other. Like, if you have a sozo moment, you might actually need to follow up with a counseling session, so on. So it's not necessarily like one size fits all. It's really dependent on your own journey.
Please ask Jason if he's having a great day.
Oh, Jason.
I'm having a fantastic day. Like, can't they tell?
I know. You seem just so excited.
Yeah, I am. I love doing
Living his best life. Okay.
At least hunting would be living my best life, but I'm living a good life.
Yeah, it's a good one.
All right, keep going.
Okay, next question. In the beginning of a relationship, is it healthy to want to spend all your time together and you don't want to be apart? Or is that a trauma response?
It's like when really good food is in front of me, like, do I want to eat it because I'm comforting the pain in my life, or do I want to eat it because we've been wired to really want to eat food?
It tastes good. Yeah.
It just depends. Like, there's not going to be one right answer to that. When Lauren and I first met, my now wife, I mean, from the very first day that I asked her out, like, we were friends and we hung out once in a while, and then, like, I asked her out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so it
I was like,
takes a
hey,
little
will you
bit.
go out with me? And so we went for a walk. You know, I'm 29 years old. I go for a walk with her. She's 24, but a very mature 24. And from that first day on till we got married, I maybe spent, like, she went on a mission trip, so I spent 10 days away from her there.
Yeah.
But it's like, we spent time together.
Yeah, you're getting to know somebody.
Yeah, a lot of time together. And was that wrong? Like, if I'm 16, it's like I probably need to live a little bit more life. No, for real. It's like,
Like have some friends and
have some friends, have a
some
girlfriend
hobbies.
that we do stuff together, and not keep it so serious, right? Because I'm not at a point in my life, I'm not 29, where I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, do we enjoy each other, right? We're climbing that ladder. Do we enjoy each other? Are you safe? Like, can you handle my emotions? Can you say no to me? Can we argue? We're trying to climb this ladder, and I don't, so it's like this healthy balance of, I need to spend enough time with you to be able to figure that out. And at the same time, like, I still can't drop on my friends, right? Because healthy community. And here's, let me just say, like, here's how you know, or at least here's some ways to know. If I can't not be around you, problem.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm not okay with you being not okay,
Right.
okay, now we're starting to see some dependency or codependency, right? Like, that's where you start to break down into the nitty gritty. Like, I don't tell you the truth. Maybe that's coming from my past, my trauma in the past. Like, I have to have you
Be okay.
Yeah, be okay with me. And those would be more telling than how much time I actually spend with somebody, because personality is going to play with that. Lifestyle is going to play into that.
Right.
Busyness is going to play into that. And so it's very hard to tell based upon that. But when you start to get into the symptoms of trauma in a person's life and the symptoms of codependency and this, right? So then you start to get into, like, no, it's way more telling if Elijah gets frustrated when you want to spend time with a girl. If Elijah gets frustrated when, you want to take a weekend away and go do something fun.
Yeah.
If he feels really insecure because you haven't, talked to each other in the morning. So those are signs that it's like, hey, Elijah,
Yeah.
you got something else going on. So that's more of what I would say than that.
Right. If it's
You
causing
anything to add to that?
Well, I was just thinking, like, because I think probably in my life I've questioned, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to spend all my time. I remember when Elijah and I were dating,
Yeah.
I wanted to spend all my time with him, which was so strange because I had never dated anyone before. And I thought, oh my gosh, my friends, like, how do I balance all of this in my life? And I just remember thinking, like, well, I can be away from him. It's not causing me anxiety. But there were definitely times when I realized, wait, now I feel anxiety if we're away from each other. That's probably not a great space to be in.
Yeah.
Especially if you're just dating somebody. But then also you're saying, like, back to being, like, 16. And I think there is, like what you're saying, there's kind of this journey you have to go on and when you're younger of just, you don't even know who you are yet, let alone how to build a life.
And friendships help you discover that really well, right? So if you shortcut that 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, if you're not exploring who you are, what you like, what you desire, what you don't like, these experiences with other people, and you get so fixated on one person, you build a whole history with somebody before you've built your history with yourself.
Right.
And then it's very hard to know, like, do I really want this relationship, or do I want what you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, totally.
And so it can be a challenge.
Totally. And I think we often underestimate even the value of friendship, because that's kind of the place you get to begin to learn those things and cultivate those things that you get to bring.
It's so true. So one last piece to this, I just had it in my head. Let me just grab it really quick. Oh gosh. It was something that you said. I was going to play off of that.
Yes. What did I say? The anxiety of being away from each other, or learning,
really good too.
learning yourself.
Yeah. Oh, we typically, and here's why I want to talk about this. We typically have this idea. We talk about this a lot. Like, you need to live a really balanced life.
Yes.
And that only works for certain things. Because you never actually, part of excelling in life is living one-sided. Part of really, really excelling in mastering something, think about becoming a master in an area. In order to master something like LeBron James mastered basketball, well, he didn't live a balanced life.
No, that was all he gave his time into.
It was mostly what he gave his time to.
Yeah.
And he regulated the rest of his life to make sure that it could support this thing.
Yeah.
And so most of our life, we try, and here's the thing, if you try to balance out your whole entire life, you will be average at everything.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to really dial in and find your purpose, find your people, find your calling, and then start hitting goals if you don't actually think, where do I want the majority of my time going? Where do I want the majority of my effort going? Where do I want the majority of? And so, different seasons in our life need to be focused in on different things. When you're newlywed, you're not going to live a balanced life with your friends.
Yeah.
You're going to live an unbalanced life with one another.
Yeah.
Figuring out your sex life, figuring out the stuff that's going on inside of you, building that bond.
Yeah.
Then as your marriage blossoms and grows, like, okay, now we might need to focus a little bit more on our finances and so I'm trying to say, like, you have to live a healthy body, soul, spirit, and make sure that you're eating a balanced diet and exercising and doing all that stuff. But when it comes to your focus, nobody that is really good at life and excelling in life. Think about when you have kids. When you first have kids, Lauren and I have just had another baby. She's not living a balanced life.
No, yeah.
My time with her isn't even balanced. She's so focused on that baby.
Right.
Now, she gives me enough that we're okay.
Yeah.
But her time is on this. And here's why I say this, is because I think for people that are on here, we try to balance out our life thinking that that's the way to go. And we feel a lot of shame, a lot of guilt over, like, I'm supposed to be doing all these things. Like, probably one or two major things in a season.
It's a lot of pressure, too, to try
Tons.
to do everything.
Yeah, and that's where moms, especially, they feel so much shame around, like, oh, I'm being a full-time mom, but, I'm not working full-time and I'm not doing this thing, and all these other people. That's why Instagram's terrible for people, right? Is you look at somebody else in their fruit-bearing season, and you're in a root-growing season, and you think that you're supposed to be bearing fruit. Man, God's like, no, I took all the leaves off the tree. It's wintertime for you. In the wintertime, the roots grow deep, and because they're putting all their effort and energy into growth, right?
Yeah.
And then in the summertime, you're going to show that.
Right.
So anyways.
No, that's really good.
Yeah, I'm creating my own questions for people.
No, that's really good. I think it's like, it's fresh revelation for me, even, because I'm like, sometimes you just want to do everything.
Yeah, you can.
And you can.
That's how I had my first nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
Trying to do
I'm reading a book
everything.
about trying to do everything. It's really good, but you see the most successful people in the world. You're, like you said, LeBron James and all these people.
Anybody that you really, really respect.
They were focused on becoming an expert at that thing.
They maintain these other areas to get them to the goal that they want to go.
It's so good. Okay, next question.
Managing
We have
expectations,
literally so many questions coming in. But
Yeah, you can already tell we're not going to get to them all.
Yeah.
Somebody just talks so much.
How can a young dating couple cultivate emotional connection / intimacy? How can you practically make yourself be seen and known in a relationship and let someone in? It's kind of what you talked about. Vulnerability.
So there's levels to a relationship, right? And we can teach a whole lesson on this.
Yeah.
And there's to me, like, one of the mistakes that people make, they go too far, too fast, in hopes that that's going to build connection. And it does build connection, but it builds connection without trust.
Yeah.
And think about it in terms of money, because it's easier to talk about in terms of money,
Yeah.
right? Let's say that you have $100,000. It's the only $100,000 that you're ever going to have. And you have to take that $100,000 and build the rest of your life off of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is your seed money.
Yeah.
Before you were to give that to an investor or invest in a property,
Right.
like, let's say that you're gonna take that $100,000 and put a down payment in on a duplex, right? So you're gonna invest that money in.
Yeah.
Would you look at the paint and the lighting and the carpet and the silverware and the couches and the cushions
Right.
and decide if that's the place that you want to buy?
Right.
You wouldn't. Because the paint doesn't really matter. The silverware doesn't super matter. The carpet and the cushions and the couches that are in there doesn't matter. What matters for your investment is the bones.
Yes. The foundation.
Do you trust that place? Is it
Right.
going to be there a long time?
Right.
Is it about to break down? Are there
That's really good.
are there unseen things, right? My friend just told me a story the other day. He said, we bought this home and then we were getting really sick like the first few months. We had all these weird stuff. Well, come to find out, a rat had chewed through the plumbing underneath.
Wow.
And so in his daughter's room. And so all this water was just dumping under his house. Well, mold and rats. It attracted tons of rats. So you got rat poop and you got mold. And that was hurting them.
Yeah.
So you have this beautiful house, right? It's got everything that's great, but it's got mold.
Dang.
So why am I saying this about relationships and dating? Is because so many people get so fixated. It's human nature, right? What does it feel like?
Yeah.
What does this do for me? And relationships have a natural anxiety to them. It's the same when you get excited about something, there is anxiety in there.
Yeah.
And it's like the same feeling that I get when I'm pursuing an animal, when LeBron James is playing a game. That same excitement is also the same anxiety that he would feel if something bad was happening to somebody was pursuing him. It's very hard to tell the difference in your brain. It's just, is it attached to something that you want to chase, want to do, or is it attached to something that you're afraid of? And so here's what happens in a relationship. I feel like I'm just going so long with these answers, but I really want people to understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you start a relationship, everything inside of you is trying to tell you, like, are you going to marry them?
Yeah.
Do they like you? Are you going to be rejected?
Yeah.
How far, right? And so there's this anxiety to figure that out quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But here's the problem. You don't have the answers that you need to answer those questions.
Right.
And if you try to get those answers without going through the process,
Messy.
so messy.
So messy. Yeah.
Right? So if I make out with you, if we have sex together, then I'll really feel like you love me. I really feel like we're committed.
Right.
So we try to create this false intimacy. And this is where I'm getting to. Like, here's part of the punchline is when my goal is intimacy with you, when we're dating, the challenge with that becomes what's the process for creating that intimacy?
Yeah.
Because
Really good.
I can create intimacy with a prostitute, but the end result is dissatisfaction. I'm ultimately going to be in pain. Because I'm going to be left alone,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, but my ultimate goal with my wife is intimacy, is connection.
Yeah.
Therefore, I will do confrontation with her
Yeah.
in order to have real connection.
Right.
I hope this is making sense to people. Because we have to think through, like, the picture between intimacy with a prostitute and intimacy with my wife is a beautiful picture.
Yeah.
Because it's so true, right? Like, I want intimacy. I was wired for intimacy. I want to be known. I want connection. I can go get that in 10 minutes today. And I can get it 20 times. It just doesn't last.
Right.
But then if I want this real intimacy with my wife, I have to learn boundaries.
Yeah, you got to put in some work.
I have to learn my needs. I have to learn me. I have to learn if she can handle boundaries. I have to learn if she can handle needs. We have to be able to disagree.
Right.
We have to be able to, okay, and then it's like, I have to be able to know me to start to bring pieces of me to you. So that's why I say it's a ladder.
Yeah.
And when you start building intimacy with somebody, with anybody in any relationship, whether it's dating or friendship or marriage, you start climbing this ladder. On one side of the ladder is trust.
Yep.
On the other are these questions. Like, so the first question I'm asking with a guy, let's do a guy friend, right? A guy I get to know. I just meet him. Maybe I meet him at church. First thing I'm asking myself is he fun?
Yeah.
Like, do I like talking to him?
I enjoy him.
Because if I don't like talking to him, then I'm not ultimately probably not going to really trust him.
Right.
And I don't really want to build a ton of connection with him. Let's say that he's fun, but then he only talks about himself. What does that say about a person that only talks about themselves? What's going to be their capacity to really learn, know, understand, nurture, cherish me?
Right.
Well, I don't care how much money he has. I don't care how many hobbies he has. If he only can talk about himself in a relationship, or mostly, it sets off warning signs in me.
Right.
Well, if your goal, and this is where people miss it, right? And they miss it because they don't think through, like, does he have the ability to communicate well? They just go straight to, hunting, fishing. He's wealthy.
Right.
He wants to connect you, right?
Yeah.
Like, he wants to go on all these hunting and fishing trips, but he doesn't want to. Same thing with marriage.
Yeah.
How many people start their dating process and what they're thinking of is this someone I want to marry? And then that you can't answer that. So
high
it
stakes,
raises your anxiety, and then you go like, do they like me? And man, the more beautiful she is, the more successful he is, the more you want that person to like you, just naturally.
Right.
So you skip over this process, like, do they have good core values? Do they love God? Do they, and so many of the people that come in, I was just talking with someone yesterday on a call, and on a counseling call, and she was wanting to get a divorce. And she was wanting to get a divorce because he deals with a tremendous amount of self-hatred and suicide.
Wow.
He's had suicidal stuff for years. Well, what happened? He's had it since he was a kid. Since he was 5, he's been suicidal. And self-hatred. Well, when they got married, when they were dating, they completely just glossed over that piece
Yeah.
and dove so deep into one another. So when you're building intimacy, your intimacy should always follow your level of trust.
Yes.
I took a long time to answer this.
A lot of these people they've already been there. They're like, level of intimacy exceeds level of trust. So powerful. He's about to say it. You're onto it. They got you.
But I can talk about what I want today and how long I want to,
No,
right?
it's excellent.
When your level of intimacy exceeds your level of trust, you're in trouble.
Yeah, so good.
So you want to go through the process of, are they fun? Do they know how to do give? Do they know how to express themselves? And then really building intimacy is being able to share your story, being able to be genuine, being able to be authentic, being able to have compassion for yourself, because you have to be able to share your story, right? My story includes oral sex with boys, with a boy. My story includes masturbation addiction at the age of 10. My story includes divorce. My story includes so these are all things that my story came with when I met Lauren.
Right.
It included all that. So it didn't exclude that.
Right.
And therefore, when I am dating Lauren, she's got to be able to see the sides of me that makes me,
Right.
the good and the bad and the ugly. So everybody wants connection and intimacy, but that doesn't come through vulnerability. It comes through compassion, courage, authenticity, and vulnerability.
Yeah.
They all partner together to create this deep level of intimacy.
That's so good. Whew.
Man.
That's excellent.
It's hard just to give an answer, right?
No.
Because
There's
the
so
thing
much
is,
to it.
yeah,
There's a lot to it.
yeah, and it's like I could give you guys the answer, but if I don't tell you why it matters and how it matters, then we don't do it correctly. And even if you're already married, right, with your spouse, and you're like, man, I've already climbed this ladder. It's like, well, you might not have.
Right.
And you may not be getting to a place of real connection with people in your life because you're shortcutting that.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's really good. I remember when we were dating and you asking Elijah, you asked him, well, what's your intimacy level at on a scale of 1 to 10? And he said 3. And I remember him calling me because we were long distance and telling me that he said 3. And I remember being like,
No.
are you kidding me? I'm at 3 with the lady at Starbucks. Like, I'm at 3. But it was so telling of really where we were at in our relationship, of that trust was not built. We had been dating for like 3 months. I don't know if I can share all of me with you. So it's so true. It's a ladder that you climb in
And
your
here's the thing.
relationship.
You should be at a 5 with the lady at Starbucks. And or at a 3 with the lady at Starbucks. And at a 3 with a guy that you've been dating for 3 months.
Yeah.
Because he has so much more access to hurt you. There's so much more at stake.
Yeah,
So
totally.
if you get it backwards and you're like, I'm at a 9 with a guy I've been dating for 2 months, and I'm like, whoa.
What happened?
The chances that he doesn't come through for you, where the lady at Starbucks is going to come through for you. So building that, like, you can share your story with her. That's why, like, I can share a story with a prostitute and she could accept that. But she doesn't have any way to hurt me. Like, she's not, there's no rejection
There's no
in it.
access to your heart. Yeah. Totally.
All right.
Okay, on to the next one.
We're doing good here.
Man, we have so many questions. Let's see. Let's dive deeper into the transparency.
Can
thing.
we?
Somebody asked, how can we become authentic, transparent, and show up as fully ourselves? How can we connect to your own hearts and let people see us, especially if we feel uncomfortable being seen? What are some tangible steps we can take away from transparency into vulnerability?
Okay, I'll
That's
try
a
to move quicker.
long-winded question,
I'll try to
but-
move quicker. Everyone's like, oh, frick, he's going to spend 3 hours on this.
No, we're getting some good feedback. Keep them coming in.
When you were born, what you believe about yourself wasn't created by you. The way that, so whoever wrote this, and for all you guys, how valuable you feel as a human being, whether you share vulnerably or don't share vulnerability, whether you build connections easily or just so freaking hard, most of that wasn't created by you. And so I try to just relieve people and go, like, the way that you connect, the way that you see, the way that you experience life, probably not your fault. Because your foundation of who you are as a person was built by your environment. So when I was born to 2 really loving parents. They loved me. And not only did they say it, but they showed it. My mom nurtured me. She breastfed me for a long time. She spent time with me. She dropped me off at school every day. She helped pack my lunch. She talked about what school was going to be like. When I had anxiety about it, she listened to me. She validated that. What's the message that I was sent?
Yeah.
You're important. Not only that, but you're safe. So my dad told me I was special every day. Every day that I can remember, he would tell me, you're not like everyone else, son. You have something special about you. Well, at about 17, I remember driving across the bridge coming to Reading, the Whiskeytown Bridge, and it dawned on me. The only thing that's different about me from everyone else is how I think.
Wow.
Like, I had
Does
been
he
thinking about it
believe
for that long.
Yeah.
17 years later, I realized, oh, there's not actually anything special about me except for the way I think about myself.
So good.
But here's the thing. Like, you can't also miss over this. When I'm 10 years old, I have oral sex with a friend of mine, a really close friend of mine. I don't know that it's wrong. I just feel bad about it. I feel wrong about it. I can't even remember how many times we did it. Maybe 2, maybe 5. I don't really know. I finally tell my dad about the oral sex. And he says that he saw that I was like feeling down, and he like, hey, what's going on? All I remember was being in the laundry room telling my dad, like, I was sucking on my friend's penis. Like, that's what I had to tell him. I'm not trying to be graphic. That's to the degree, and the only thing I remember my dad saying, which he remembers saying a lot more, was, oh, son, you're just curious. It's just not what we do.
Yeah.
You don't need to do that anymore. He took this scary, deep, dark, ugly thing and went, oh, you're awesome.
Yeah.
And not only that, but I can handle that. I can handle your mistakes. At 15, he told me, make all of your mistakes at home because you have me and your mom to help you. At 14, he was walking me through my struggle with pornography for a year. He didn't go, okay, it's been 2 times.
Yeah.
He was like, okay. And so, listen, why do I tell this? Because you cannot skip over this when you're talking about, now you're 30, you're 40, you're 50 years old, and you're going, how do I build intimacy with somebody? Yeah. Well, the way that you see the world and the way that you experience people is probably not your fault, but it is your responsibility. So you're not a victim. And you want to move out of that victim real quickly and move into responsibility. So now you go back to what we talked about: courage, compassion, authenticity, and vulnerability. Can you love your story? Now, if your parents didn't love your story, if they didn't know how to nurture you and care for you and cherish you, you have to go back and love you. You have to go back to that young boy, that 10-year-old boy who's having oral sex with his friend and go, I love you. You're important. You didn't know. You got to go back to that. If you were a bully, you got to go back and go, listen, I love you. You did something wrong. You're not something wrong.
Right.
You didn't get taught well. You were acting out of your pain. You got to go to, the 16-year-old that was sleeping with girls or sleeping with boys and hurting girls or hurting boys and going, okay, well, why did you act out? Yeah. You have to understand you and not excuse it. You have to apply real compassion, because the only difference to people who feel loved and who don't feel loved is people who feel lovable feel worthy of love.
Yeah.
They don't have a different story. Almost everyone's story is like mine. Oh, you did a bunch of things that you hated. Yeah. You got addicted to stuff that you didn't want to. You acted out in pain. Like, whose story isn't that? Yeah. Very few people's.
Right.
The difference is I look at that through the eyes of my dad, my earthly dad, and my mom. And they said, this doesn't define who you are. It shows what you need to improve and where you need to grow. And by the way, son, you don't have to hide this. You don't have to hide this from the church. You don't have to hide this from us. So I didn't hide it from the church. I didn't hide it. So the most important people in my life said, this is important. Wow. Therefore, when I started to hang out with friends, I didn't feel like you might reject me if I show you who I am.
Yeah.
So I call it weaponizing your story. Here I go, telling a longer thing. You have to get to the point where the things that you deemed as shameful, the things that you deemed as, if anyone knew this, they would hate me, they wouldn't love me. Okay, no, sorry. That is shame, and shame is going to define you. And shame comes in like a best friend. It tries to keep you out of pain, but it keeps you locked in there forever. Now, what you need to do is you need to weaponize your story. You need to have compassion for yourself, understand why you did that. Now, work hard to get yourself out of those places. Don't make an excuse to stay in there. Don't be a victim. Work out of those places. Those places become a victory. Now, every place that you have overcome, you have power over. Give that away. Teach someone the tools to get out of this, which sometimes the tool is just acceptance. Then you can build real intimacy in relationships, right? Because I'm coming to Lauren, my wife, I'm coming to you with, you can see all of me. I'm not hiding. I don't have anything hidden in my life. Yeah. And in the places that I want to hide, I expose them to the people that love me.
Right.
And there's some pain in that. But then I take ownership of it. I take real ownership of it, and I go, this is my problem. Yeah. This isn't my parents' problem. This isn't the person who molested me's problem. This is my problem that I need to solve. And so when we can go and begin to accept our story, and then, okay, maybe you have a hard time opening up to somebody, go get the tools.
What are the tools?
go read the boundaries book. Go get a little bit of counseling to teach you how to really accept you. Spend $200 on yourself.
Yeah.
$100 an appointment. Do 2 appointments to spend an hour talking about, okay, I have shame. How do I break a partnership with shame?
Yeah.
How do I tell if somebody's safe? What do I do when I feel a lot of anxiety, when I get triggered?
Yeah.
That's what a counselor is going to help you through, right? Or you could even look it up and you can go like, okay, I start to share with somebody who I know is safe and I feel a lot of anxiety. What's my next step? Right?
Yeah.
Like there's just 100,000 tools. That's why I'd be here all day. Like
Right.
I'd have to teach 10 sessions on how to fully be intimate with somebody because every issue is different. But here's what I'm saying is if you take ownership of it and then you start to go, I'm not okay without living intimately. The first step is you will only share with people what you feel is acceptable or valuable from you. Because if you still have shame, you will not share that with people.
Yeah.
You will not open up. And so the first step is overcoming shame. And the best way that I know to overcome shame, to me, is you got to go back and you have to love that person that was stuck in shame. And so like sometimes what I do with people, and if everyone was live, like if I could see them, I would do this with them, but I can't. And if we could talk back and forth, I would have them close their eyes and I would say, go back to your earliest childhood memory when you did something wrong. And keep your eyes closed. So go back to the 8-year-old Jason.
Yeah.
Now with your eyes closed, what's the 42-year-old Jason think about the 8-year-old Jason? I'm going to access this incredible place of compassion, right? Because the 42-year-old looks at the 8-year-old and goes, well, of course he's acting out.
Right.
Of course he's having oral sex with his friend. Like, it feels good. Like, I'm really curious. I was a curious kid.
Right.
And I wanted to connect with my friend even more. I didn't want to let him down. Like, oh, that doesn't make me evil. That doesn't even make me gross. That makes me normal. And then I get to look at that 8-year-old and go like, I love you. Like, you're normal. I forgive you. Or the 14-year-old, or the 16-year-old, the 18-year-old. Well, what am I saying to myself? See, you're every age that you've ever been. So it's not the 42-year-old Jason that's afraid of intimacy. It's the 8-year-old still. I'm living out of, I'm reacting over and over and over again my belief system at 42. The 42-year-old's not afraid of new love. He's not afraid of new relationships. He's not afraid of hard decisions. The guy that got hammered in love, the guy that got hammered in bad mistakes, the guy that's the guy that's running this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to go reconcile those.
That's really good. Whew. That's excellent. I mean, people are like, this is going to change the world. This is amazing. So good.
Yeah. And all this for $79, folks. You know what I mean? Like, if you guys like this stuff, you should tell your friends, hey, listen, just the Q&A is worth it.
Yes. Yeah. So good.
Like, people can't buy my time, you know what I mean? Except for $79.
You're crazy. Okay, let's see.
They can still buy this, can't they? Like,
Yes.
people can go and buy this and watch it back later.
Well, they'll have the replay.
The replay.
Yeah, but then this will be sold after the fact for if you have friends that want to.
Because we're just trying to make money.
I can't.
Oh, we have to pay for the transformation center. Like, we have to help people, right? So this goes into our budget. This helps us run.
Not trying to change lives.
Yeah, trying to change lives and help build the best center in the world. Okay, keep going.
Good. Okay. So next question. This is kind of further deeper into this authenticity vulnerability conversation, but they're asking, what's the difference between authenticity and vulnerability? How can I overcome the feeling of extreme shame? You kind of talked on this.
Oh man, I'm not going back there again.
No, but it says, and becoming defensive when receiving correction.
Yeah, just don't, okay? Just don't be defensive. No, here we go.
I was like, what?
It's like somebody with anxiety, they're like, oh, you just need to relax. Like, oh,
Okay.
why didn't I think about that? My bad, yeah. Okay, here we go. What's the difference between authenticity and vulnerability? So authenticity, to me, when we start to really break down authenticity, Brene Brown would say, is accepting where you're at while letting go of where you think that you should be or what you think you should be. I really am me. You really get to see the real me.
Yeah.
So my Instagram story today, if I was being really authentic, like if I was in a relationship with Instagram, I'd be like, I woke up this morning feeling shame because my wife was up before me and I'm still laying in bed at 7:15. Like, that's a true story about me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's just where I'm at.
Totally.
And so, I had to confront my shame this morning. I had to actually go, yeah, you're not a bad person. You're not a bad leader. You're not a bad human being. You need to make a better plan to get up at the time that you wanted to get up.
Yeah.
Which my alarm was set for 7:30. So I'm not actually saying I did anything wrong.
Right.
I'm literally saying I felt wrong. I felt shame when I woke up.
Yeah.
No problem.
Right.
That's just where I'm at. Sometimes I feel shame and I deal with it. And then I went and got my blood drawn for something and I was 10 minutes late to meet with my dad. I felt some more shame there. Like, literally, I felt like, oh man, why didn't I set myself
Shame
up?
could just chase you all day.
Well, it could.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between feeling shame and living a life of shame. So shame visited me. I felt shame for a second, and that's not bad. It's not a horrible thing, right? The person that can't feel shame, now we're scared about. That's a psychopath. Like, that's a person that commits crimes and doesn't feel anything bad about it.
Yeah.
They feel justified in it. And so I felt, I'm like, what's a way that I could have planned my day better? I become the scientist, not the doctor. Or sorry, not the judge. I become the scientist. I start looking at my life and I go, I feel shame. Okay, I need to reinvent my days so that I can come to a better outcome next time. Okay, now what can I do? What can I do to help myself to right this wrong that I did to my dad? I'm 10 minutes late. What can I do? I can communicate to him right now.
Yeah.
Instead of hide, I can open up. I'm being authentic with my dad now, aren't
Right.
I? Like, hey, went to get my blood drawn. I'm gonna be a little bit late. So, authenticity is being who you really are,
Yeah.
where you're really at, all the time. And vulnerability says, okay, I have to give the definition of vulnerability, the verses, vulnerability versus transparency, in order to answer this question.
Yeah.
So transparency says, you can see me, but you don't get to touch me, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
Because there's a lot of people I share my story with, right? That story's so old. I've shared it so many times. Any one of these stories, they don't actually have access to hurt me. Now, who has access to hurt me? You, my kids, my wife, because you're seeing real-time stuff.
Yeah.
You're seeing stuff that I'm not ready to share with everyone.
Yeah.
But I need to share it with you guys. And so vulnerability is like a covenant. It gets into, I have permission to change your mind.
Yeah.
You have permission to change my mind.
Yeah.
That's why it's not real vulnerability when I have sex with a computer screen or a prostitute, or going back to that.
Yeah.
That, if you blow this up really big, you can see it. You're like, oh, she doesn't have permission to change my mind. She's not dealing with the finance. She's not dealing with the decisions I made. A prostitute's not like, I'm really frustrated that you didn't wake up on time.
Right.
I'm really frustrated that you're not leading our family well.
Yeah.
I'm really frustrated that you don't show up for me emotionally. Like, that's real, right?
Right.
Me going, see all of me naked and here's some of my past, and that's why affairs aren't real. Oh, I've just helped somebody out.
What?
That's why affairs aren't real. You're not waking up with the person next to you going, wow, you really disappointed me because you're not showing up for me emotionally. That's not happening in an affair. You're getting the best of the person and all of their sob story with all of your sob story. And there's no real life living. That's why affairs, a marriage that happens, a marriage that happens out of an affair, like for instance,
Yeah.
you have an affair on Lige and then you go marry that guy, which wouldn't happen. That's why I'm using you. That second marriage has such little chance statistically
To survive.
because it wasn't built on the foundation
Yeah.
of real vulnerability. Gosh, but it feels so vulnerable. It feels so real. But we're not talking about the years of history that you didn't show up, or the years of history of that Elijah has to deal with your overreactions and your period and you don't see that.
Right.
But
right.
real vulnerability does, right? It says, you have permission to touch me, to change my mind, to really, that's why it should take a while.
Yeah.
So people, when we're in a dating relationship, they try to shortcut vulnerability with transparency. They go, oh, I just found a hack. We get to make out, we get to have sex, maybe we won't have sex. Maybe we'll just make out and touch each other and tell our deepest, darkest stories. Oh, but bring real correction?
Right.
Get real input?
Right.
Tell you how you hurt me? Probably not going to really be able to do it.
Wow.
So it's not real vulnerability. It's just transparency.
That's really good. Can you speak to the point of defensiveness when receiving correction?
Because we have shame.
Okay.
Yeah, because we have shame. When we're defensive, it's because it's not because what I think you're telling me is really going to help me. It's, I already think that I am this thing. I've been telling myself that forever. You're just touching on something that I beat myself up over every single day. And how dare you touch a painful part of my life?
Yeah, that's good. Helpful.
When a little kid says to me, Mom, look, he's bald. I'm not like, no, I'm not.
Right.
I'm like, hey, it kind of sucks, huh? I mean, it's a little painful.
Right.
But I'm not like, no, I'm not. I'm not bald. No.
Right. You're not trying to prove that you're not.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I am. That's why I keep it shaved.
Right.
So that people go, oh, wow, you have a shaved head, instead of, wow, you have a bald head.
Right. Yeah. Very good. Okay. Somebody's asked, how do you handle good boundaries with parents and others who live in a victim mentality and have narcissistic tendencies?
I love those old narcissistic tendencies.
Oh, do you?
So
you might
fun.
be the only one.
Yeah. You use really good boundaries, and you be okay with people not being okay with you.
Yeah, that's a hard
Yeah.
time.
So here's the thing. If this is you got to get the boundaries book. And you have to learn the boundaries book. Don't read it, learn it. You got to learn the boundaries book, and then you got to practice it. And you have to be okay with, especially if you're out of the house. So this gets way trickier, right? Like 16-year-olds asking this question, like, what do I do with a narcissistic mom?
Right.
I'm like,
So
gosh,
hard.
dang, man.
I mean, hard.
So freaking hard. But when it comes to somebody who's out of the home, like, I don't have a relationship with my parents because they're my parents. I have a deep relationship with my parents because they've learned how to handle my needs and respect and honor me. And I've learned how to respect and honor them.
Wow.
We do conflict.
Yeah.
And it's not fun. Like, I do conflict with my parents.
Yeah.
That's not a secret.
No.
It's not fun. We cringe about it. I'm like, oh, I got to talk to Dad tomorrow. And sometimes it takes a while for me to get to that conflict. Sometimes it's like, God, I hope he changes but they do the same thing. They're like Dad will come to me like, I got to talk to Elijah. I'm like, oh, frick, I hate that.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a good relationship with Elijah or a deep one or with you because I'm bound to that. So, once I don't feel very bound, very obligated to relationship with my kids once they leave, my parents, beyond my responsibilities with God. Now it moves into our connection. Can you handle your end of the bargain?
Right.
Because is it honoring my mother and father if I let them walk all over me and all over my family? No, I just become the enabler.
Right.
If I never set real limits and real boundaries. And so, here's the thing, guys. Without needs and boundaries in a relationship, you don't have real care or real love. It's impossible. Without needs and boundaries. So, anybody in my life now, besides, this is where Evan, he's still in the home. Like I'm not expecting him to do a great job fully with my needs yet or with my boundaries. He's learning.
Right.
My little kids, I expect more and more out of Elijah and Riley. I expect more out of you. I expect more out of my parents even than you and Elijah. And so that standard gets risen with my parents and you guys, it doesn't get lowered.
Right.
And so, you got to learn boundaries and follow that.
That's really good. I like what you say about the not being obligated to it either, because sometimes you're like, oh, but they're my parents.
Yeah.
But learning those boundaries.
Yeah.
That they actually set healthy relationships.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, right? It's like the husband that abuses his wife, right? Emotionally, maybe doesn't show up for her and shames her when she does something wrong. And then like a cat, let's say like they're out to eat and another guy shames her and he stands up and he's like, hey, you don't talk to my wife that way. Like I'm the only one that's allowed to shame my wife, you know? Like that's really what, and so like nobody's allowed to, is my point.
Yeah.
Like your husband isn't allowed to shame you. Mm-hmm. He's not allowed to continually break relationship with, he's not allowed to be narcissistic just because you said I do.
Yeah.
Like you got that, there has to be real boundaries.
Yeah.
God's not just like, oh no, you married him.
Yeah. Right.
Now you're gonna die emotionally.
Lord.
It gets tricky. I'm not gonna give the answer for that. It gets tricky, but so we've got to set healthy boundaries.
That's good. Boundaries.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to the BraveCo Podcast. If you like this podcast, would you please rate it, review it, leave us a great comment. And if you like this episode in particular, share it with your friends and family. That helps us to spread the word. Guys, stay brave. We'll see you next week.